Good morning and welcome to Morning Vibe. My name is Remmy Majala. I hope you've had a wonderful day so far. And we're here to have a conversation about the other side of addiction, the journey to recovery. What is the reality of this aspect? What are we exactly looking at? And we have a guest, I can say, that is literally, just set for this conversation because of his journey, through addiction and his mental health, and he is on the other side. But the question is, how did he get on the other side of this? So in studio we do have with us Sunday Kapesi, and why I want to emphasize on his title is because of how he says it. He says he is a proud recovering alcoholic and addict, addiction recovery support and mental health advocate. He is proudly recovering, for that matter. And with that mentioned, we have a question of the day, and we're asking you basically, what is it that you would want to see highlighted more in the journey towards recovery, and addiction, for this matter? What would you like to be highlighted more in the addiction and recovery journey? Would love to know your thoughts on the same. Remember, our handles on Facebook and X are at K24 TV, and our WhatsApp lines are right there on your screens. We're asking you, what would you like to be highlighted more in the addiction and recovery journey? And with that mentioned, let me, of course, once again welcome my guest, Sunday Kapesi. Sunday, thank you for coming.
Asante, Remy, thank you.
Nashukuru sana. And Sunday is it comes all the way from Tanzania. And let's begin on this note, Sunday. Mbona unasema proud, recovering addict?
Swali nzuri, that's a really good question. And it takes me back to a talk I did back in Tanzania last year. I went public February last year, and I was talking at a corporate company.
Look at that, you've come full circle.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
February this year.
Yeah, true. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
it's actually 12 months. You should see my first social media video. It was this way.
I saw that you did that.
You did see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Content is what matters, right?
That's what matters, yes.
So at this corporate event, I was invited to speak about my journey. And that's the first time I'd used proud, recovering addict and alcoholic. And someone in the crowd said, why would you be proud of that? And at that moment is when it hit me. I said, I am in recovery. Means I am no longer an addict or an alcoholic in the sense that I am not in recovery. I'm suffering. I'm actually on the journey to healing. So by proud, I mean I'm happy that I am recovering. I am no longer bonded. I am no longer shy. I'm no longer embarrassed. I'm no longer in pain. And I'm doing different things to try and get better, mending relationships. So there is pride in recovery. It's almost like someone who's in remission from cancer. Yeah. Why shouldn't they be proud of the efforts that they've made? I've never had cancer. I know one or two people who have, and they take great pride in overcoming.
I see.
Yeah.
One thing about your journey is you're very self-aware. And when you were able to understand that you have addiction, and this is towards substances like alcohol, cocaine, heroin, you did tests to know that you have ADHD and the like, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So how did that awareness play, into the part of your recovery?
So my addictions were 3, and I say it in order of intensity.
Okay.
It was emotional eating. 3 years ago, before I went to rehab, I was 124 kilograms. For someone who's 6'4", which means hypertension was knocking on my door. Yeah. Now, my mother tells me, your grandmother died of hypertension. I didn't even know that. Wow. So when I entered rehab, the very first thing that hit me was, okay, addiction and alcoholism is impacting my physical health. And I got to see what other people were suffering from when it came to increased alcohol and drug abuse. And my second was cocaine. Never tried heroin or anything else, but it was cocaine. And then third was alcohol. But they're all addictions anyway. Your question was on self-awareness. I entered rehab July 27, 2022, and I did that in Nairobi and Limuru. So this is where my recovery began.
I see.
And 4 days after entering, I did my mental health assessment test, psychometric test. They want to know mentally, emotionally, physically how I'm doing. I'd never done any of these tests. They were multiple choice questions, very simple. And ADHD stood out. Like I got like A+. And I remember telling the psychiatrist, I think this is why I'm here. I think this is what it is because I can't focus, etc., etc. And then they find out I have depression, grief, insomnia, anxiety. Now, I looked at that and I didn't argue. I went, these are the professionals. This is what they see. Can I get to learn more about this? We started going further and further away from the actual addiction to the underlying issues. So addiction and alcohol use disorder, that's how we call it. Those are the presenting issues. That's what everybody could see in the world. But deep down inside, there was a very vulnerable 40-year-old who had anxiety, who had lost his father 2 years before. I didn't know I was grieving. I didn't know I was depressed. And that depression is induced by grief. And everything I'm telling you, I learned in that 104 days.
And were you close to your father?
So I was the firstborn. So like any other family of 4, any other African household. My dad was old school, so you know, disciplinarian, very strict. No, I love you, no hugs. Yeah. But I know, yeah, Kazana, be a man, be an example. Yeah. I laugh now because I've gone through some of these issues, and in rehab, grief counseling is the very first thing that they did. So I'm here to tell people, we lose people every day. I hadn't lost anyone very close to me until I lost my father.
Right, at 40?
I was 40, yeah. And that's when I lost someone very close to me. And I had no idea the issues the intensity of the issues. I had my issues with him. He was very proud of me. He did the best he could. But now what do you do when the person you have issues with is gone? You think the issues go with them? Yeah. You have to deal with them.
And did you have closure?
So this is the thing now. Did you know that grief has its stages? I didn't know. And some of the stages coexist. So I was in a depressed state induced by grief. Now during the grief counseling, I got to cry for like the very first time since we buried my father. And I think I spoke for maybe 2 hours, the very first session with my psychologist. She knows herself. Thank you very much. Yeah. We need to give a lot of credit to these professionals, I have to tell you. So I went through the stages and I got to accept that he's no more and the issues that we had, and they're no different from anybody else. You know, did I get validated? Through the counseling, I got to realize, yes, there were critical moments in my life where my dad did validate me. And I was upset that my 2-year-old at the time would not remember Babu. But I've got 3 kids. The 2 older ones, they'll remember Babu. So it came out in the counseling that, you know, your 2 older daughters will remind your son. And you've got pictures, and you saw it, and you'll tell your son about it, and that clicked. Another validation was I just started my first business at the time. But 2 weeks before he passed, I got to tell him about my business. And I was like a small little turtle, just hoping he likes this thing. And he did. He loved it. He was so impressed. And my last memory of my father was he validated my business. The one time I needed validation, I got it.
That's what he gave you.
But in the grieving process, you forget all of that stuff. It's, now what do I do? Am I really head of house? So many questions go through your head. So yes, I did find closure, and I accepted it. And that was by and large because of grief counseling and being in that rehab enclosure, because I didn't have pressure externally.
Now, you're a father, and you had a partner.
Yes.
And your children. So while you're grieving your dad, your kids also need you.
Yeah.
And here you are hooked on these substances to just cope and survive.
Yeah.
How was your family life and relationship looking at that moment?
So I have to give credit to the mother of my kids. She's a great mom. Really is raising the kids where I could not. I'm rehabilitating, I'm rebuilding my life. So she's really stepped up. Now imagine at the time, I'm a father, I'm unemployed, I'm a son, I have this small little business I'm trying to get started. So you get lost into all these roles. I'll be the first to say I wasn't a present father. You know, that was gut-wrenching, especially when I was in rehab and I couldn't really see them or talk to them, right? So you have to find ways to make peace. So at the time, with all of the pressure, I slipped into my substance abuse. I slipped into my alcohol. I would isolate quite a bit more, you know, avoid the issue, avoid the pain. I had terrible anxiety. I can remember vibrating when...
Literally shaking.
Literally shaking when maybe my mom would call me and say, I need you to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'd just like get overwhelmed. So she stepped up, and that's great, and still has. And one of the casualties of my addiction and my alcohol abuse and my mental ill health that I was unaware of was the end of that relationship. So 8 years together, 2 kids. And I went, and she really worked very hard to get me to rehab. So I'm very grateful for that. So,
I see.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, you can't recover alone, and you can't ask for help alone. To ask for help means you're already talking to somebody else.
Right.
So I am where I am because of the support, starting with her.
Okay. We need to, of course, remind our audience of the question of the day. And we're asking you here this morning, of course, as you're listening to this particular conversation, what would you like to be highlighted more in the addiction and recovery journey? What would you like to be highlighted more in the addiction and recovery journey? Remember, our handles on Facebook and X are at K24 TV, and our WhatsApp lines are right there on your screens. We're taking a short break. We'll be back with more of this conversation and, of course, Sunday's elaboration of his journey. Stay with us.
Good morning, good people. Welcome to another episode of True Story, my personal video series where I can
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. If you just right now, we're looking at the other side of recovery, and recovery we mean addiction and mental health. And we are highlighting the journey of Sunday Kapesi here, who is quite open, and he highlights his highs and lows, and he is still on a good path on recovery for this matter. So we have one of Sunday's videos where he basically. Let's go.
Good morning, good people. Welcome to another episode of True Story, my personal video series where I capture real recovery stories that inspire real change. Today's topic is what to do when you're on the move from one city to another, or you move from one country to another like I have, and be able to maintain your sobriety. So first and foremost is Google. You Google Alcoholics Anonymous in the city or town that you're in, and you get a whole list of places where fellow alcoholics meet. If you're substance use abusing and barriers, you Google Narcotics Anonymous. And in a city like Nairobi, where I am, they're actually all over the place. It's a really cool network. And that's what I did. Because of the networks I'm connected to, either physically or virtually. I think I attended one social virtually this week. In the city you go to. So you meet other men and women who are at different stages of their sobriety. It's a great way to network and meet people who understand where you're coming from, understand where you're headed. The beautiful thing about it is zero judgment, and you find your tribe. So here I am at the Nairobi SDR terminus on my way to Mombasa to meet a gentleman and his wife that I met at the Eastern Community Convention in Arusha earlier last year. And this is what I mean by attending meetings, attending conventions, doing this virtually, is you meet like-minded people. And I'm on the way there. I'll be staying for a week. We'll be diving into the 12-step recovery process. It's people who've been sober for decades. And gives me an opportunity to see Mombasa after what, maybe 12 years. Gives me an opportunity to try out this electric train. So I arrived here a week ago yesterday, and my sobriety journey continues. So if you are driving for business, recreationally, or moving countries, look out for AA, look out for NA. In the city near you. That's how you meet your friends, the right people, and through that network, get to know your way around. And
well, there you go. That is Sunday elaborating his thoughts, putting things into perspective right there. And Sunday, let's take a look at, your emotions. I want you to basically elaborate how you felt when your mind was willing, but your body is not, reacting to you in the same way because you want to do more for your children, but here you are in a funk.
I'll give you an example that comes quick to my mind. My son was about 2. So before we separated with my ex's mother, I was already staying in the guest room, and he'd come knocking at 7 in the morning. Now, their mother is Brazilian, so they speak Portuguese, Kiswahili, English. So papai is Portuguese for baba.
Yeah.
It's like, papai, njoo cheza na mimi, njoo cheza na mimi. I'm in the room. Yeah. I'm high. I'm drunk. I'm tired. I developed terrible insomnia. My record was 4 days without sleep. Wow. That's nuts. You're supposed to 4 days. I could do 4 days.
That's insane.
So there I am hearing his voice and I can't move. I'm paralyzed. And then his older sister was 1.5 years older. I hear her say in Swahili, mwache baba alale, akiamka atacheza na wewe. And then he'd keep knocking. He'd keep knocking. And what do you do with that? So this is maybe 6 months before I entered rehab. Now 104 days in rehab, and I can only talk to them maybe once or twice a month because they try to insulate you. And that thought till now, that memory still haunts me. Now at the time, that just gets you to do more substances, isolate even more. Because then I'd wake up about 3 in the afternoon feeling a little bit better, play with him, buy him a lollipop or something, feel a little better, but I feel like crap, you know? And I have lots of examples like that. Now, how do you deal with that? In rehab, the day before his birthday, it was my day to share how my recovery is going. And I remember just breaking down and crying in front of maybe 30 other grown men. Wow. And I was wailing, you know, and the whole room is quiet. And I just couldn't believe that I couldn't be there for his birthday. I was going to miss my daughter's birthday, and this is where life has led me. I felt useless. I felt defeated as a man, as a father. All of those titles I gave you as a business person, I wasn't there for my business partner. So you feel like a failure. Now, what do you do with that feeling? You've got to sit with it. You've got to make peace with it. And the strategies for that is mindfulness, meditation, prayer. I was spiritually bankrupt. For someone who grew up in the church, I didn't attend church for maybe 10 years.
After?
But, yeah, I mean, prior to my dad passing, I was in and out of church. Like, again, I'm ashamed to my higher power, to God, right? I'm ashamed to myself. I'm ashamed to my ex. I'm ashamed to my mother. I'm ashamed to my kids. So you have to live with that shame. Now, what do men do? What did I used to do? Avoid it. I'd get into conversations. I'm pretty affluent. I can speak. So I can avoid certain conversations. Is that really helpful? No, it's not. You've got to sit with it, make peace with it. Back to that example in rehab, there I am crying. Yeah. And you know what came out of that? These guys sang happy birthday for my son. Like the worst karaoke ever. But the sweetest moment.
Like all these 30 men.
These 30 men like just got up and started singing happy birthday, mentioning my son's name. And there I am. You know how it is when you're crying and you're laughing?
Yeah.
Like I wish
quite the sight. Did you record it?
That's what I was going to say. If that was a TikTok video, I'd be a celebrity by now. But that helped. The next day I called my son to wish him a happy birthday. Do you know what this 3-year-old tells me? Papai, mama amekataa kununulia chapati. Unaweza kununulia chapati? Lakini niko Nairobi, si upande ndege uje ununulie chapati afu urudi. And I burst out laughing. I went to this kid. All that matters to him is a chapati from his father. That's how the healing process begins.
That is quite something. And I just want to, of course, still continue this tangent, but we need to take a short break. We'll be back with this conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. If you're just joining us right now, we are highlighting the story of Sunday Kapesi, basically his journey with addiction. He says he's a proud recovering addict, and we love to see it. And Sunday, let's take a look at how your relationship with your family was, mending the bridges that, quote unquote, you burnt a long time, and also loving yourself. One of the things that substance does is make you really hate yourself. Yep. Now, on this journey, how did you mend those things?
Mending, very good talk, very good question. Number one, so I'm unemployed. I'm the firstborn. I'm the eldest brother. All these roles mean I should be related to in one way or another, right? Now, that's my sister sending me data when I'm out of bundles. That's me calling my mother and saying, I don't have bus fare. Can I get some bus fare? That's humbling yourself rather than, Sasa, so you give me money. I did this for you. I did that for you. You know. So the process of recovery has been a humbling one. Who paid for my rehab, if not family, friends, relatives? So when I left rehab, I had to, in Kiswahili is kichuchuma. You know, like I had to,
yeah.
And that's what, and it's not easy because I got incidences where I felt invalidated. So I had to decide, am I going to express my problem with you, or am I going to bite my tongue and pick my battles? And that, they don't teach you that in rehab. They teach you how to communicate assertively. You have a counselor who can intervene. So your pride is getting hit every single day. Now, the 12-step Alcoholic Anonymous recovery program teaches you about making amends. It's about being honest. You write down an inventory of everybody you harmed. Your sponsor will tell you that in AA. Seasoned people who are sober will tell you that. You go back and say, Naomba msamaha, I did this. This was the intention. This is how I hurt you, and I am sorry. And you have to understand that someone can forgive you unconditionally. That's what we all want. You can be forgiven with conditions, and you can be not forgiven. And it's a process. You don't do it in one day. You know, for instance, my relationship with my ex, I think that one I had to make peace. We're now parents, you know? And that was the last one that was really hard for me to let go of, because I figured, you helped me get to rehab. Why don't you help me with my recovery? This is new. I decided to move in with my mother, live half the week with her, half the week on my own. Why? I wanted to mend my relationship with my mother. She is a Christian woman. She loves to pray. She loves to walk. And I made these promises when I was in rehab. I said, I will walk with my mother. I will pray with my mother. I've been on buses from Dar here. I get to Namanga, I call her, and I'm like, let's pray. And I remember she'd say, like any bus driver would be listening. I'm like, and this is a practical example. I got to River Road. That's where my budget could afford for me to stay. And I remember the bus driver telling me, in 20 years of driving, sijawahi kumpigia mama yangu kumwambia nimefika, asante kwa sala zako. So this is what kind of happens when I think you do the right thing, which is the hardest thing. There's a ripple effect around you. So I am a student now at K24 University studying addiction. I've been unemployed for 2 out of the last 3 years. How did I get there? The very same family, very same friends, followers as well, and have anonymous donors who've contributed to my education. And why? Because I think I am showing practically what recovery looks like. My sister told me, you've decided to go public. What happens when you relapse? What utakuonaje? And I said, I'll talk about it. I'm not the first. I will not be the last.
So with that mentioned, how is a journey with self-love?
Yes.
Do you love yourself?
Yes. Now I do. I did not for a long time. Low self-esteem, imposter syndrome, anxiety, shame, guilt. Friends during banter would go, I remember I walk a lot. I didn't have money to have a car. I remember a friend of mine in Dar passing me with this big Ford Ranger and stopping and telling me, kumbe ni kweli unatembea mji mzima. Sisi marafiki zako bana, tuambie tuchangie, we buy you a Vitz. This is what people are afraid of. My comeback? I'm on the board of an NGO with street-affected kids. Why don't you contribute that money towards those kids? He couldn't drive off fast enough. That's how my confidence started coming back. My kids, when I see them, they run to their dad. And I started going, these guys don't care that I was an addict or an alcoholic. They may remember in one way or the other, but right now they are happy to see that. So I started seeing myself through their eyes. Wasn't easy, but flipping worth it.
So is acceptance a form of self-love?
Yes.
Like for you to be this open and articulate the emotions, especially as a man. You just told us you are strong enough to cry. You have cried in front of other 30 grown men.
Yeah.
You know, and how was that, the reaction from them? You know, like were they accommodative? Was it hard for them
That
too?
example in rehab where I cried before they did the karaoke.
Yeah.
So this other guy came and hugged me, much older than I am, in his 50s, and he whispers in my ear and says, Sunday, be grateful you cried. Kuna kitu najaribu kulilia, sijalia miaka 20, and off he walked off. And you know what that told me? How much pain is this guy carrying? And he actually knows where the pain is from.
And
but
he knows how long it's been there.
How long it's been, and he sees me and can relate to the fact that I've released. You know what was on the other side of that crying? Release. Like the first time I cried in grief therapy, I think I slept for a day and a half. Like I remember the psychologist saying, how do you feel? And I said, I feel like I'm in a desert. Sijui nitaenda wapi, but when I'm ready, I will move. My sleep improved. Every time after I cry, my sleep improves. And trust me, I monitor my sleep because it's a problem.
And how long do you sleep now since you had insomnia before?
So on average, I can average 5. If I get 5 hours of sleep, I'm good. But I know how to detect. Am I anxious? Am I depressed? Am I stressed? If I rule all those things out, sometimes it's just poor sleep habits. Like I'll be on my phone writing. I'm now obsessed about writing about my recovery. So I try to get off my devices. I try. I don't always succeed. But I can go to bed knowing I'm not anxious.
I hear you. Let's take a look at now human behavior and where you are seeking forgiveness.
Yeah.
Human beings, like you said, you can be forgiven conditionally or unconditionally.
Yeah.
But also there's the reality, and now this is a thing about men and women, is that most men will say, I did these things, man, and I would like her to forgive me.
Yeah.
But what we were speaking, I remember before this conversation or interview, you said you were talking to some men and you asked them, if it was you who did these things to your partner or to your wife or spouse or whatever, would you expect her to forgive you? And they said, no.
Yeah. So,
you know, give us that perspective.
I was just talking at a rehab facility yesterday. I like to do this. I get invited. I share my story. And I was targeting the men. And I said, here you are in a rehab facility because of alcohol, drugs, etc., etc. Ingekuwa vice versa, na ni mke wako ambaye ni addict or alcoholic, would you be in that marriage? Would you be supportive? Would you be raising the kid? And one guy said, hapana. And I went, let's clap for him. He's
real.
He's being honest. And there's somebody
honest.
else who said, yeah, I would like to think so. I said, I think you're also being honest.
Yeah.
Now get tested and then let's find out. But right now, know that your wife is supporting you. And I saw that in rehab where women were coming to see their men, and I'm like, wow.
Hold on to that, because that's a very important point. We're taking a short break. We'll be back with this conversation. Stay with us. I like that. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. We're highlighting the story of Sunday Kapesi, and he says he is a proud recovering addict, and of course he is doing more for his mental health journey. Sunday, you've given a lot of talks. People have listened to your story, and you said you go to rehabs, you just have forums, you write a lot. What is the aftermath of those talks? When people contact you, men and women, what do they say?
Man, that's part of my recovery. Like, by helping others, it's so impressive, the number of phone calls I get and emails and WhatsApps from men especially. You know, I know a guy who called me crying on the side of the road. You know, he had been drinking all weekend. He got into a fight with a significant other, and he remembered a video that I did, and he goes, I think my relationship is almost over. I think alcohol is a problem. Where do I start? And I go, well, number one, you've asked for help. Amazing. Even just saying amazing to a man at his most weakest point, you see a man crying even more. I experience that all the time. I get called by wives telling me, I need your help with my husband. I need your help with my brother. And I always go, it has to start with them. So you tell them I'm ready, and they give me a call. So I find that people can speak. African men can speak.
African
men specifically
to be specific.
To be specific, can talk.
Yeah.
But I think rather than tell them what to do, I think show them what you're doing, and then they speak. I think that's what's been working, because last year I relapsed for the first time after 2.5 years.
Really?
And at the time of the relapse, I was going through a lot of emotional issues, trying to mend relationships. So there's a push and a pull.
Yours or others?
Mine. I was trying to mend relationships and being a bit more assertive. And you know, with every action, there's a reaction. So that affected my exercise routine. I run marathons. I walk a lot. So I didn't do that for a couple of months. One guy called me out of the blue and says, Kaka, when is so-and-so? I'm like, yes. Mbona sikuoni unakimbia? I don't know this guy. I don't see you running. I'm like, very good point. Yeah. Unajua bana matatizo ya maisha. I talk a lot to strangers. So there I was telling him, yeah, I'm trying to mend relationships and it's not really working out. And then he says, I am 130 kilograms. I wanted to call you liweze kunisaidia because I'm addicted to eating. And I went, even after what I just said, and I'm off my exercise routine, you still want me to help you? He's like, so can you help me or not?
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? Starting today, naanza kukimbia tena. Let's make a deal. You walk X amount of kilometers, I will run double those kilometers. And we did that for about 2 months. That's what's happening. That's how the healing process works. By serving other people, they hold you accountable. That's what I've found is working for me. It may not work for everybody else, but now people call me and go, where are you? We don't see your videos. Where are your articles?
Let's take a look at this very important aspect of counseling and the people who actually do the counseling, the counselors. Yeah. Because you said something important before we had this conversation, which is you've gone through the issue of addiction. And sometimes you come across counselors who are more academic. Okay, they've gone to school for this, which is A1. That is what you need. Yeah. But how is the disconnect from only having that and not applying, let me say, emotional intelligence? What's your perspective, especially for someone who's undergone the treatment and rehab? Okay, so I'm undergoing recovery. I will always be in recovery. And I always try to demystify that because people say I'm cured. There's no cure, it's an illness. It requires management, structure, determination, right? So I am in recovery, always will be. 2, I think it's stigma, I think it's silence, I think it's old-fashioned conservative thinking that we look at counselors as the enemy. And I think it's because you're then faced with, there's something wrong with you. You know, when you think of an alcoholic, you think of someone swaying. Yeah. You think of a drug addict, you think of somebody who's passed out. Yeah. You know, the truth is, functional addiction is a term I use, meaning I was a lawyer. I would go to court, I would go to the office, and I've done my lines. I have my gin
in my Dasani water bottle, in my breast pocket. So we have addicts amongst us who are probably unaware. So as soon as you say you need help, you're saying I'm crazy.
Yeah, but I'm fine, and
But
you can see I'm
eh?
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And provided you're paying the bills, you've got a job, you can justify yourself 100 different ways. So to your specific question, I'm still in counseling. I work with counselors. I bring addicts to counselors. If they're academic, if they're 25, if they're 55, provided they've got something that works for you, take it. The challenge now are those stereotypes we have. I'm turning 43 next month. If my counselor is 25 and it's the first time I'm doing counseling, we don't take into account that generational difference. And that is a problem. So how do we address that? Unless you kind of say, I would love to get a counselor who's 50. You have a right to say that. And if that person is available, fantastic, and good luck. You know why? Statistics, and don't quote me, I think Tanzania has about 55 psychologists. We're 61 million people.
Wow.
100 psychiatrists. We're 61 million people. In Kenya, I was looking at the stats the other day, I think 120, 140 psychiatrists. What are you guys, 41, 45 million people? So you don't really have the luxury of being picky.
You get what you get.
Get what you get. And that's what my sponsor keeps telling me. It's like, Sunday, if it's yoga, if it's counseling, if it is a 10-year-old young boy who has something to tell you that can help you, take what works for you, leave the rest. So these are problems, they're there. And I wish we would emphasize more on getting people to study these things. So let me praise K24 University and SAPTA College by Dedan Kimathi or Corner House.
Yeah.
They teach addiction. Do you know how any other university teaches addiction? University of Cape Town. East, Central, Southern Africa, 2 universities and a couple of colleges. It's a problem. It's systemic and it's beyond my pay grade.
Okay. And how important is it to be as motivated? You know, we've always had the aspect whereby you need to go to rehab, you need to. And there are people who've, quote unquote, snapped out of addiction by themselves without any rehab, without anything. Yeah. You know, so those are two dynamics there. Please elaborate that part.
Very good question. Willpower, very important. Spirituality, very important. Well-being, wellness, counseling, self-awareness. You know, the thing is, rehab is a foundation. It's not the answer. That person who did it off their own didn't do it by themselves. There was somebody that helped, whether they like to credit it or not. So the answer for me is multifaceted. Try out different things, but it begins by, I need help. You know how I got to rehab? It was an intervention, including family and friends who sat me down and said, listen, if our friendship is over, it's over. You need help. People will run away from such interventions. You feel like you've been violated or something. The truth is, you're an addict. And the truth is, you don't want to face the truth. Umeiba, you're not discharging your abilities or responsibilities. So, to be honest, it's when you get a window, run with it.
All right. And with that mention, we need to take a short break. We'll be back with this conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back, and we have come to the part where this conversation winds down, and we're highlighting the story of Sunday Kapesi here, who is a proud recovering addiction and, you know, let me say mental health advocate. Yeah, it has a ring to it. Because I'm like, when you go into saying mental, you're like, namalizia na nini upande uko, you're hanging. But anyway, that said, Sunday, let's take a look at your feelings and, you know, things that you may be entitled to. Not even be, you are entitled to. So you've been on a healing journey. You're in a good place, so it's stabilizing right now. And you feel the need that, okay, I want to be in a relationship. I want to love and be loved. Would you advise someone else who's watching you that it's okay?
Yes, absolutely. Why? I had to reestablish my relationship with pain. The reason why I was an addict, the reason why I was doing alcohol, drinking alcohol, there was pain, whether it was grief, loss, embarrassment, shame, unemployment. You need to reestablish it and sit with pain. Pain is not my enemy anymore. Pain is actually a sign that maybe there's something that needs to be worked on. 3 years now, I've not been in a relationship. Why? It's not like I haven't had opportunities, but I'm broken and I'm trying to heal. Why should I drag somebody else down with me? And I want peace, I want comfort, but not at the expense of pain. And if I'm doing amends with people, then I have to walk my talk. It's not straightforward. I made a lot of mistakes. I came on this show and said, in more or less, I sucked as a father, but I deserve to be a father. I deserve to have more children if I want to. But to get to that stage, you have to make peace with where you are right now. So yes, I was asked at that rehab facility yesterday, Sasa itakwaje? Don't you want more kids? Don't you want to be in a relationship? I said, I want all those things. But it takes time, and I need to put in the work.
So as you're winding up, what would you want to tell anyone who is still struggling with the notion of how does the other side really look like? What is the reality? Because healing is a family. Everyone gets affected by someone who is, yes.
It's a team effort. You can't do it on your own. If you try it on your own, you will fail and get even more frustrated. Reverse everything you know about kukazana, kuwa mwanaume. Just reverse it. Give it a shot because everything else has failed.
Na wanawake.
Ah, yes. So thank you for telling me that. I had 1 or 2 clients who were women who are also alcoholics and struggling. It's even worse for them, relatively speaking, because society has this image that we ni mama wa watoto, we ni mke wa mtu, so you can't do these things. Men and women, ask for help, receive it, pay it forward. On the other side of it, you'll be surprised. Healing is waiting.
All right. Sunday, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here and being bold and saying your story in such an elaborate, articulate way because especially men, they need to hear more, you know, of this and in such an empowered way. So thank you so much. We appreciate you watching Morning Vibe. My name is Remmy Majala. This has been the story of Sunday Kapesi, who is a proud recovering addict and also a mental health advocate. We appreciate you. And of course, coming up next is Tony Mirigi with E Interactive. Stay with us. All right, you're welcome. Thank you.